Okay, good morning. I will dedicate the shir today, the learning, Bshvat ben Zion Israel ben Chana, Amy's uncle, who's hospitalized, not doing too well. So she'll be a refuah shlema b'toch shar cholei Israel. This time we're doing from home. One of my daughters was tested positive to Corona, so I don't want to get near anyone right now. Although we tested negative, the rest of us, but you never know if there's something developing or not. So better this way. Okay. So we'll start with our tefillah course, and then go on to our brachos. Also, Tu Bshvat Sameach. There's Tu Bshvat. Actually, Hilchos Brachos are very relevant to Tu B'Shvat. Whoever had last night a Seder Tu B'Shvat, there's such a thing. Mainly Sfardim do it very seriously. Ashkenazim aren't so careful and deep about it, but we do something to resemble. So there's a lot of issues of brachot, which goes first, Ber Priya Etz or Priya Adama, and which types of Ber Priya Etz. So actually, with our brachos course, we'll be soon beginning, hopefully even today, we'll start this whole topic of which bracha comes first. So it's exactly relevant to Bshvat. And also, I'll just mention a short Dvar Torah, which has to do with our brachos, with our tefillah course. On Tu B'Shvat, what happens in the world? Why is it the Rosh Hashanah La'ilanot, the fact that it's Rosh Hashanah for the trees, why is it Afkan Tu B'Shvat? What happens today in nature? What happens that it's signified as the Rosh Hashanah of the trees. So Chazal say, Shebo pasku yardu rov gishmei shana. Most of the rain has fallen till Tu B'Shvat during the year. It's the ending, towards the end of the winter. Today it's a little bit early this year because we have a leap year. So it came a little bit early in the world international calendar. We're just in the midst of January, so it's still not the very end of the winter, but it's going towards that. And mainly, Chazal say these are the days that Yotzeh Saraf Ba'ilanot. Saraf is that gooey stuff that comes out of the bark of the tree sometimes. So it starts coming out now. What is that signal? What is that a sign for? So the sign is that the tree is preparing to start bearing fruits once again. But it's a very beginning process of bearing fruits. It will take a while because it's still cold weather. So the summer fruits aren't out yet. But it's just the very beginning of it. So the explanation the Hasidic books give to Tu B'Shvat is that although we're in the midst of the winter or nearing the end, but it's still very cold, and it seems like everything is dead. It seems like all the trees aren't giving their fruits, aren't bearing fruits, they're not live. The leaves have fallen off. It's cold. It's dark. It seems like the most difficult part of the year, and yet within this difficult weather and this darkness in the world, within that begins new life. Yotzeh Saraf Ba'ilanot. So we should always bear in mind that even if there are difficult times, and sometimes nationally, for the nation is difficult, sometimes privately, or individual, it's difficult times, they should bear in mind that within those difficult times, there's a seed that's starting to sprout, to grow, to become, to overcome the difficulties and come to a better life, and come to a more fruitful life, and come to happier times. So within the bad times, Et tzarai Yaakov umimena yivashea. From within the difficulties, from within the challenges that Am Yisrael have, from within that, Hashem is already preparing the salvation, the Yeshua. Umimena yivashea. So that's what we hope for all that's going on right now with the COVID and with the type of government that we have. We're hoping Hashem is already planting the seeds to a better life, to better times, for better times to sprout and grow, happier times for all of us. Okay, so that's to Bshvat. In the course of Tefillah, we're at the very end of Birkat Hashivenu, Birkat Tshuva. We discussed the difference between Avinu and Malkeinu versus Torah and Avodah. And we discussed what it means to be machzir b'tshuva shleima lefanecha. Tshuva shleima, we said, meant tshuva me'ava, where we love Hashem so much, we appreciate Hashem so much that we don't want to sin. We don't want to disobey Hashem in any way because of our great love and admiration towards Hashem, and not due to just being fearful of being punished or wanting to be rewarded for doing good. That's a lower level of tshuva mi'irah, and we're looking for tshuva me'ava, which is the tshuva shleima that this bracha is referring to. Before we finish the bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem harotzeh v'tshuva, before we learn about the meaning of harotzeh v'tshuva, we must discuss for a moment a fundamental and very basic emunah question that comes out from this bracha and some other brachos as well, but mainly this one. We know there's a saying of Chazal, Hakol b'yidei shamayim, chutz mi'irat shamayim. Everything is in the hands of Hashem. Hashem decides anything that goes on in our life, in the world. Everything is controlled by Hashem, except for Yirat Shamayim. Meaning, will we be fearful of Hashem? Will we worship Hashem? Will we follow His mitzvot? That's completely in our hands. That Hashem does not lead, doesn't cause, doesn't create in us. Rather, we are in charge. We are responsible for ourselves. It all depends on us. If we follow Hashem's path or not. That's what we call free will. We have free will. It was incarnated in creation that human beings have free will, complete free will. We won't get into the philosophical, theological question of how is it possible that we have free will and at the same time Hashem knows everything that's going to happen. That's a famous question that the Rambam discusses a lot, and the Ravid argues with him on that, and other Rishonim and Achronim. That discussion is a very old, ancient one. We won't go into that right now. We have to realize that from our point of view, we have true, real free will. The Torah says it very explicitly in the beginning of Parshas Re'eh. Re'eh anochi noten lifnechem hayom beracha ukala et habracha asher tishmeu v'im lo tishmeu. And then it says, no, actually it's later on in Parshat Nitzavim. Sorry, in Parshas Nitzavim. Later on in the Torah, it says, Re'eh natat lifnechem hayom et hachayim ve'et hatov ve'et hamavet ve'et hara uvacharta b'chayim. I've presented you with life and good, with death and evil. Choose life. Meaning choose to be good. So then you'll deserve life, or a good life. So that's freedom of choice. Hashem tells us choose. Had it not been that way, says the Rambam in the 8th chapter of Shmona Prakim, of his introduction to Pirkei Avos, says the Rambam, had it not been that we receive total freedom of choice, then how can Hashem punish us for doing something wrong or reward us for doing something right? Or how can He bichlal command us to do good or bad, the rights and wrongs? What's the point? If we're forced to do something because Hashem directs everything, then what's the point to command us this way or that? So it has to be that we have complete freedom of choice, and then He can command us to do this and not do that. And if we do the wrong thing, we get punished. If we do the right thing, we get rewarded. So that's a very important understanding in our emunah, in our world of belief. According to this, what is this bracha of Hashivenu? How can this be? We're requesting of Hashem, Hashivenu avinu l'toratecha, v'karvenu malkeinu la'avodatecha. That you, Hashem, bring us closer to you, bring us closer to fulfilling the Torah and closer to worshiping you. Torah and avoda. What does that have to do with Hashem? That's up to us. Each and every one of us needs to come closer to Hashem, needs to fulfill the Torah better and better. Why are we asking Hashem to do that for us if He's not at all in charge of it? If He's not at all, doesn't decide on this point of Irat Shamayim, what will be with us? So what's the point in asking Him? Hashem will throw it back to us and say, hey buddy, I'm sorry, I'm not getting involved. It's your issues. It's your efforts to put into to worshiping me. I have nothing to do with it. This is a very fundamental and important question. So the Rishonim answered to this question by saying, the Rambam has a similar question about something else in the Torah. We all go into his discussion, but his answer to that other question leads to an answer to this question as well. The idea is that Hashem doesn't get involved in what we choose. That's very true. We're completely free to choose on our own if we do good or bad. But the circumstances around can be easier for us to deal with or more difficult to deal with. Sometimes Hashem lets our surroundings be convenient, be easy to follow Him. We're not challenged by external issues that take us off the beaten path, or by difficulties in our physical life that also make us feel bad, miserable, and then it's hard to worship Hashem. Or He allows us to have a convenient life, comfortable life, that makes it easier to follow. So that's what we're asking of Hashem. We are in charge. We're responsible for what we do or not do, follow or not follow Hashem's ways. That's totally up to us. But we're asking Hashem, Hashivenu avinu l'toratecha, make it easier for us to follow your ways, Hashem. We will choose in the end, but the circumstances, the conditions around us, let them be as convenient as possible, as easy as possible, so that we find it easy to follow you, Hashem. Don't challenge us with severe difficulties that may throw us away from the beaten track. Like we just to mention the most terrible disaster ever in Jewish history, the Holocaust. The Holocaust was completely the opposite of Hashivenu avinu l'toratecha v'karvenu malkeinu la'avodatecha. It was all going against the Jews, and even, there wasn't so much of a difference, but definitely regarding the believing Jews, the religious ones, the ultra-religious ones, they were hurt and hit exactly the same, if not worse, than all other types of Jews. So it made it very difficult, and we can't even put ourselves in their condition, and we can't judge whatsoever what they chose to do or not to do, following Hashem's ways or not, because they were challenged by such tremendous difficulty. So we can't blame anyone for throwing away their belief, their religion, because they feel Hashem left us. Hashem is no longer help with us, so why work hard to serve him? Of course, that isn't the correct attitude, but we can't at all blame them for feeling that way. We were never put in such a challenge, and we should never be, chas v'chalila, ever in such challenges. So that's what we're asking of Hashem. Help us by the means of supplying a surrounding in our life that will be easier to follow you, Hashem. That's the point. In the end, it's definitely up to us, no matter what our surroundings are and what goes on in our lives, we still have to follow Hashem and overcome any challenge that comes to us and continue worshiping Him. So let's just finish the bracha itself. Baruch atah Hashem, harotze v'tshuva. Hashem wishes that we do tshuva. Here we find the concept that we said before. Hashem doesn't make us do tshuva. He wants us. He wishes that we do tshuva, but it's up to us. If you say to someone, Ani rotze sheta'aseh kach v'kach, I request that you do this and that. I ask you to please do this and that. So it means it's in the other person's control to decide whether he'll do it or not. You're just expressing your wish for him to do it. So Hashem wishes that we do tshuva. That proves that it's up to us to do it. Rav Aviner, in his book on Tfilat Amcha, he quotes a midrash that speaks about a conversation as if it's more a spiritual, philosophical discussion. Not that it actually occurred, but it's the question was asked to the Nevi'im, to the Chachamim, to the Torah, and to Hashem. What can a person do to fix his sin? If a person sinned, what can he do to fix it? So the Midrash says that the Nevuah was asked what to do. The Nevuah answers, it's in the book of Yechezkel, Hanefesh hachotet hitamut. A person who went against Hashem, who sinned against the Torah, against the mitzvahs, he did the wrong thing, he should die. It's like we found before, Karvenu malkeinu la'avodatecha. Hashem is regarded as our king, and there's a din of mored b'malchut. If a person disobeys the king, according to Torah law, he deserves the death penalty. Disobey the king is one of the worst sins possible. So the King of Kings, Hashem, definitely a person who disobeys Hashem deserves to die. So the Nevuah replied that a person who sins, his punishment should be death. Then the Torah was asked, how should we punish the sinner? The Torah answered, he should bring a sacrifice of Asham or Chatat, and then Hashem will forgive him. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu was asked, Hashem was asked, what is the punishment? What should a person who sinned do? So here we find that Hashem prefers most that we do tshuva. He doesn't want us to die. It says explicitly in the Nevi'im as well, Ki lo echpotz lemot hamet, ki im beshuvo midarko v'chaya. Hashem doesn't want us to die after being sinful. Hashem wants us to correct our ways. True, there's the idea of bringing a korban, sacrifice of chatas or asham, to serve as an atonement for what we did, but that doesn't help if we're not changing our ways from within. If we're not perfecting ourselves, we're not correcting our ways, it doesn't help to bring a korban. And that's what Hashem is waiting for, that we do do tshuva. That's how it's said, tshuva. And Hashem has patience. That's the beauty, that's the chesed of Hashem. Not only is it the chesed that he accepts our tshuva, which is something remarkable. Imagine if someone would murder someone else, cold-blooded murder, and nothing, no excuse, just a cruel person who murders someone else. And then he comes in front of the court and admits, and there are witnesses, and it's definitely true. Everyone knows for sure that he's the murderer. And he comes to court, and he says to the judges, I did what I did. It's a terrible thing. I ask forgiveness. I'll never do it again. I'm so sorry I did it. Will the judge pardon him and allow him free? Of course not. No judge in the world will allow this person free. With all your regrets, with all your bad feelings, with all the sorrow you have on what you did, you have to serve, you have to receive the punishment of being in jail for X amount of years. There is the pardoning of the president, at least in the system in Israel, that allows some people to go free earlier than they were sentenced. But in general, they have to go to jail no matter what. Whereas by Hashem is so merciful towards us that he accepts our tshuva and erases the sin. We'll see that in the following bracha, probably not today anymore, but Slach lanu ki chatanu, mechal makinu ki fashanu, ki kel tov v'salach ata. Hashem, your entity, your holiness is so tremendous and so good that Hashem is able to erase our sin totally after doing tshuva. Of course, it's tshuva that comes from the bottom of our heart, and we regret what we have done totally, and we become a new human being. Only Hashem can see inside to tell if we're really, really regretful, if we're really, really sorry for what we did, and we're changing our personality from top to bottom. That's why only Hashem can pardon us completely and fully without even punishing us for the sin we did. It's totally erased. That we'll be seeing in the next bracha of Slach Lanu, of the bracha of Slicha. And that's an answer sometimes to what we don't understand. How come Reshaim, evil people, bad people, get life, receive life from Hashem, and they sometimes have even a good fortune, live a good life? How come that's true? Tzaddik veralo rasha v'tov lo. That's a famous question already asked by Moshe Rabbeinu, by David HaMelech, by many of our sages. But one of the answers given is that Hashem is patient with this cruel person. He's willing to give him life, even a good life to live through and realize how bad he is. Now, sometimes it may not awaken the person because he feels everything is good, so why should he change his ways? But that's always freedom of choice. Hashem provides life. Hashem provides us with all our needs. We have to choose if we're doing good or bad, to do evil or to do good. And Hashem allows the evil person, the bad person, to live, waiting for him to do tshuva. That's the one of the explanations why Rasha v'tov lo, to let them find their way in the end and do tshuva. Okay, so that's for this bracha. So we'll stop at this for the Tefillah course next week. And we said that this bracha marks Reuven as the tribe that's relevant to tshuva, because Reuven did tshuva sak v'tanit on the Maaseh Bilha, on what he did wrong with the bed, with Yaakov's bed, taking it to his mother Leah instead of where Yaakov situated it by Bilha. So he resembles the idea of doing tshuva, and his tshuva was accepted. And the Torah says, "Vayu bnei Yaakov shnei masar." In the end, they were all equal. They were 11 sons of Yaakov, all equal because he did tshuva. So he's part of the family. He went back to being part of the family. Okay. We'll switch to our brachos. Okay, the very end of the chapter that we were at discussing the measurements of different foods and the definition of a food, if it's considered a solid or liquid, and dependent on that is the amount of food one needs to eat in order to make a bracha achrona kazait within 4 minutes, that's for solids, or is it revit, 81 cc within 2 or 3 gulps, which is 2 or 3 seconds, is that the amount that's necessary in order to say a bracha achrona? Last week, we touched upon the issue of a solid that really may be defined as a liquid. In what case? We spoke about ice cream and ice pops, artik, those types of foods, that really, they are liquids which are frozen. And just because they're frozen, they become a solid. If you would put it out in the on the countertop, room temperature, they'll melt down to a liquid. So do we define these types of foods as solids, and then eating a kazait within 4 minutes is possible, even though they're very cold, but you can still have 24 cc of an ice cream or of an ice pop within 4 minutes. It's not impossible. Still, it is definitely possible. Whereas if we decide that it's a liquid, then it's not possible to say a bracha achrona ever upon eating ice cream or artik. Even if you finish a whole serving of it or a whole artik, you can't say a bracha achrona, because there's no way in the world that you could have 81 cc within 2 or 3 seconds of ice cream. It's much too cold, and it's not a drink that you gulp it down. It's a salad after all, the food. So, and then we said also another reason why these may be considered like a liquid and may have to be eaten within 2-3 seconds, 81 cc, is because you're not chewing them. You don't chew ice cream. You don't chew artik. It melts in your mouth and you swallow it down. So it's like the feature of drinking, where you just swallow it and don't chew it. So for that reason, many of the Sephardic poskim, we said last week, many of the Sephardic poskim hold that it's like a drink, that eating ice cream or artik is like drinking, and therefore, according to them, there's no way that you can say a bracha achrona over the ice cream or artik you ate, no matter how much you ate. The Ashkenazic poskim, majority of them, he said, except for Rabbi Yoshib, who was also on the Sephardic side in this case, and he also decided that it's like a drink. But most Ashkenazic poskim, Shlomo Zalman, Rav Vosner, Rav Karelitz, most Ashkenazic poskim hold that it's like a food, it's like a solid. That's the texture right now, is of a solid. And therefore, and you're eating it with a spoon, you're not gulping it down in a cup. It's definitely more like a solid. And even though if it melts down to a liquid, and it's not something that you chew, rather you just swallow it down as it melts in your mouth, that's still considered a solid because you're eating it with a spoon or biting into it. The artik, you're not drinking it in a cup, and therefore it's a solid, and therefore it deserves a bracha achrona if you've eaten 81 cc within 4 minutes. So for Ashkenazim, it's definitely the right route to take to say a bracha achrona. For Sephardim, the right route is not to. In order to be yotzei all opinions, the Sephardic person should try to drink a cup of water besides the ice cream, or eat an apple, or have some tuna, whatever it may be, that will allow them to say borei nefashos after eating the ice cream, in order for it to be definite, to cover it definitely, because it's not 100% certain if it's a liquid or a solid. Or better if they eat something or drink something besides the ice cream in order to cover, in any case, the bracha achrona if it may be the right thing to do. Anyway, a lot of people get thirsty from eating ice cream. It's very common that you drink a cup of water anyhow while you're eating or after you eat the ice cream. So that serves as a definite bracha achrona case. Of course, you don't say shehakol over the water because it says shehakol over the ice cream. So you cover the water. You just say b'rei nefashos in the end because you had at least half a disposable cup of water within 2 or 3 seconds. That deserves a bracha achrona. Okay, now another situation of a uncertain case, whether it's a solid or a liquid. This is even more, or I'd say less confusing, less questionable whether it's a solid or liquid. But even regarding this case, there is a dispute whether it's a solid or liquid, and that is if you're having like something of a type of cream cheese which is soft. Not talking about the hard cheeses like the yellow cheese or the salty cheese. Those cheeses you definitely chew and they're chunky, so they're definitely a food. And then the bracha achrona is of like a solid 27 cc within 4 minutes. But if you're having a cream cheese, like the Israeli type, that's very thin and soft, so that when you eat it, you don't chew it. There's no chewing involved. You eat the Israeli cream cheese, you just swallow it down. You don't need to chew it. There's nothing chunky there to chew. Very soft. Or if you have a yogurt, the yogurt is also very soft. Lebanon or whatever those types of white or color or sweetened yogurt, you just swallow it down as you put it in your mouth. You don't chew anything. Some yogurts have chunks in them of fruits or types of hadama, pieces here and there. But those you won't have within 4 minutes kazait. You only have a few pieces here and there. Yogurt itself is mainly made of the soft, thin texture of the milk and other ingredients that are in it that make it very soft and very and no chewing necessary. You could also speak about Jello. Jello also goes down your throat without needing to chew it. All these types of very soft foods, are they considered like a solid or like a liquid? Do we say a bracha achrona over cream cheese or over yogurt that we ate, or do we not? Because to finish 81 cc of a yogurt within 2 or 3 seconds is almost impossible, or actually impossible. Because after all, you don't drink it, don't gulp it down, you eat it with a spoon. It takes time till you swallow each spoonful. You have to finish 81. Trying to think, how much milliliters is an average yogurt, like a Lebanon or one of those white yogurts? Does anyone know? How much is the average?
150 milliliters.
150 milliliters? Aha. Okay. So more than half, 81 is a drop more than half of a yogurt, of an average size yogurt. A little bit more than half within 2 or 3 seconds. That's not possible. Can't do that. So if it's considered a drink, it's considered a liquid, then you don't say bracha achrona over a whole yogurt that you ate. It's very, quite unbelievable. So again, for Ashkenazim, this is even more definite, solid. We regard this as a food, as a solid food, and not as a liquid. Because if we said by ice cream and Arctic, that even though when you leave it out room temperature, they melt and they go back to becoming a liquid, they still regard, Ashkenazim, most Ashkenazim still regard this, the ice cream, as a solid. So definitely by these cheeses or yogurts, they don't even melt. They remain the same texture whether room temperature or in the fridge. So It's true that there's no chewing of them, but it's still considered a solid, same as ice cream is. So even kal v'chomer, even more definitely so, by these yogurts or cheeses. Whereas for the Sephardic opinion and Rabbi Yoshi's, who said that by ice cream that's considered a liquid, they said it for two reasons. One is because it melts down to a liquid. B, because you don't have to chew. You just swallow it down, so it's considered a liquid. But here, there's only one of those two. It won't melt down, but you don't need to chew it. So, even though there's only one of the two reasons to consider cheeses and yogurts as a liquid, even so, many Sephardic poskim still tend to define yogurts and cheeses of that type as a liquid. Even so, because they're not chewing it. For them, that's the main defining point. Do you chew it or do you not? If you don't need to chew it, it's like drinking. By the way, I'm not talking about a case where when you have these types of very, very soft yogurts like the Leben, you shake it hard, and then when you open it, it's completely liquid because it has in it some actual water or some liquid substance, and when you shake it well, it all becomes liquid. And then you just drink it like that. You don't need to use a spoon at all. Make a hole. You puncture a hole in the cover. You puncture a hole, and you start gulping it down. That's definitely a drink according to even Ashkenazi, and that needs to be gulped down within 2 or 3 seconds. 81 cc, half of the container, a little more than half. But normally we use a spoon to eat it, and some of them, even if you shake them, they don't become liquid. They remain that type of soft texture of solid. So, and in that case, you have this difference between the Ashkenazim and Sephardim when they're a little bit more non-liquidy texture. Then you have this dispute between Ashkenazim and Sephardim. The Sephardim again should have, in this case, even more important to have a cup of water or anything, or an apple or anything that gives them the possibility to say Borei Nefashos, because here it's even more uncertain that it may be necessary to say a bracha achrona just over the cheese or yogurt. It's even more towards in the direction of having to say Borei Nefashos. But since they're careful not to, so they should have something else that will require definitely Borei Nefashos. Rabbi Phil Malka writes in his book that cottage cheese is a definite Borei Nefashos according to all poskim, without needing to drink water or have an apple. Because cottage cheese, he says, is something that does need chewing. Because it's made of pieces, chunks of cheese, even though they're very soft, but they're not like cream cheese or yogurt. You still need to chew them a little bit in order to get them down your throat. These people do that normally, and therefore that's definitely a food. Cottage cheese is definitely a food according to all poskim, Ashkenazim and Sephardim, and therefore if you eat 27 cc within 4 minutes, you're definitely in the zone of a bracha achrona. He even says here in the footnote that he checked himself all types of cottage cheese, including the 1% fat cottage cheese, which is the thinnest type. And even that, you would always need to chew the substance that it's made of, because it has those chunks in it, not completely soft like cream cheese. Okay, now the last discussion of this chapter. We're finally finishing this chapter of the amounts and sizes and definitions of liquids and solids, and how much to say a bracha achrona for, and when not to say a bracha achrona for things. So the last point of discussion in this chapter is, when do we say or when do we not say a bracha over tasting food? Okay, mainly those of you who cook the food. So sometimes you would like to taste the food before you decide if it's ready or not, or you want to know if you need to add some more spices or salt or pepper, whatever it may be, to make it tastier. Or sometimes a person wants to taste something before they decide to take that dish. You want to just taste it to see if it's tasty for them, and then they order the dish, or they'll take some to their plate. They want to first taste it. So do we say a bracha over tasting food or not? So there is an opinion, but it's dafka the minority opinion, that says that no matter what your intent is it in order to eat the food or to taste the food, the definition or the requirement, better to say the requirement of saying a bracha over food is only one situation. Are you swallowing it or not? If you're swallowing the food you have in your mouth, you must say a bracha before you put it in your mouth. If you're not intending on swallowing it, rather you're just tasting it and spitting it out, no bracha required. That's the only definition for having to say a bracha or not over food. Are you swallowing or not? So that's very easy to deal with. Very easy to deal with. If you're tasting something, you know you're going to swallow it, say a bracha before. If you're not going to swallow it, you spit it out, you're just tasting it to see how it tastes, then do not say a bracha. But that's the minority opinion. That's based on the Rabbeinu Hananel and the Rosh. Rabbeinu Hananel was one in the Geonim period. In the Geonim period, he was the rabbi teacher of the Rif, who was at the very, very end of the Geonim period, maybe even the beginning of the Rishonim period. Rabbeinu Hananel was one generation before in the Geonim period, and he decided that it all depends on swallowing or not, and same goes for the Rosh. The Rosh is one of the three most important poskim in the Rishonim period. As we know, the Beit Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Karo, who compiled and wrote the Shulchan Aruch, he decided halachically upon three opinions, the majority of three opinions, the Rif, the Rambam, and the Rosh. He took these three giant Rishonim and decided that the rule according to the majority between these three opinions. He didn't consider all other Rishonim, the Ramban, the Rashba, the Ritva, the Ran, the Tosfos Rosh. Any of the other Rishonim he did not regard as important enough to take their opinion into consideration when he rules final Psak Halacha for Klal Yisrael. And he took those three, Rif, Rambam, Rosh. So the Rosh is of the opinion, like the Rabbeinu Hananel, that by not swallowing, you do not say a bracha. If you swallow, you do say a bracha. But majority opinions, including the Rif and the Rambam, which makes it 2 versus 1 in the case of Rif, Rambam, Rosh, Rif and Rambam and many other Rishonim hold that it does not depend on whether you're going to swallow or not. It depends on your intent of why you're eating this food. If the reason is in order to taste the taste of it, but not in order to sit down and eat it, then there's no bracha even if you're swallowing it. If again, the housewife is now cooking something and she wants to taste the soup or the meat or whatever it is to see if there's need for more spices, ingredients to add more to the soup, then by the mere fact that she's not, her position, her thought now is not to eat. She hasn't decided now to sit down and eat something, or even as a snack, to take it in as a food. Rather, her intent is just to taste it. That's her entire intention. So there's no need for a bracha, even though she will swallow it down. Very, very surprising position. Of course, Tova is right. It applies to men as well. Right. I'm just used to, in our house at least, that my wife cooks all the food. But you're right. Definitely. Right. Gilad, your son, is a chef. Correct. So that's true for men as well. No matter men or women, anyone who's just there, who's just trying to taste the food, then it's then no bracha required. If they want to eat it, even if you're eating the same amount, a tiny amount, he said, as we mentioned many times in this course, that any amount of food requires a bracha. Any crumb you put into your mouth, you have to say a bracha. But it all depends on your intent. You can eat a whole spoonful of the soup or of the cholent or the meat or a fork full of the food you want to taste, but your intent is just to taste it, to see what to add flavor or not. So that makes it a non-bracha situation. You don't say a bracha over there. You're really going to swallow down a whole tablespoon of soup. Whereas if you just want to eat something, but it's a very small quantity, where you're not tasting it, you know exactly what it tastes like. It's a crumb of a cookie, the cookie crumb, or one shaked marak. It's on the table left over from dinner. You're having one shaked marak after you said already your bracha achron and everything. You suddenly see one shaked marak that was left on the table. You want to just eat that one shaked marak. You have to say B'rei B'nei Mizonos because you're eating it. You're not tasting. You know exactly what shaked marak tastes like, or a cookie crumb tastes like. You're eating it, not in order to satiate you. It's not going to fill you in any way, but you're enjoying the food. That's the main difference. Hana'at gono and hana'at me'av. Either you're satiating yourself, you're filling yourself, which is usually not by eating just a crumb. It has to be a little bit more than that, but at least you're enjoying the food. You're eating it in order to enjoy. So you're enjoying that crumb, that cookie crumb that you're having, or you're enjoying the shaked marak you're having. So that's the essential definition of having to say a bracha. When you're doing it to enjoy it, say a bracha. When you're doing it in order to taste the flavor of it, to see if you like it or not, to see if it's ready, if it's already ready or not, do not say a bracha. That's not considered enjoying. It's considered testing. For testing, no bracha. For enjoying, yes, say a bracha. Doesn't matter the quantity at all, and it doesn't matter if you're swallowing or not. Okay. The amazing point of the Rif and Rambam, of this understanding we just said now, the amazing thing is that even if you had enough, just by tasting, many times people are making a large meal of many types of foods, and they're tasting little bits of each type as they're preparing them. Again, we're not talking about a case where a person has made the food already and they're munching on the food because the food is being served from the kitchen to the people dining outside, and the person preparing the food is hungry. In the meantime, they're hungry. Why should they have to wait till they finish preparing all the food and then go out and eat while all the rest of the people are already eating? So if you're eating in the kitchen as you're preparing the food, that's not considered tasting. That's considered enjoying the food. You're making schnitzels, you're making salad, all kinds of things. You want to eat a small piece of schnitzel as you're preparing the rest of the food in the kitchen. That's not tasting, that's eating. But if you're preparing many types of foods and you're actually tasting from each type just to see that it's okay to serve, so sometimes you're having enough tastes that sort of makes you quite full. You've tasted so many types of foods that for the time being, you're not so hungry anymore. Even so, you don't say a bracha rishona over what you ate. Because every little bit that you tasted was only to taste to see if it's good or not, but not in order to actually eat, in order not to feel hungry. In the end, the result was you don't feel so hungry now. But your intent is what counts, and your intent was to taste and not to eat it. We'll give a few more examples of cases where it's considered tasting. Cases where it's not considered tasting, considered eating, like we said, that one shaked marak that you see left over on the table, when you're trying to clear away the table, after you said the bracha achrona, you find one crumb or shaked marak of something and you want to eat it, you have to say a bracha. Similar to that, cases which aren't considered as tasting, they're considered as eating, you need to say a bracha. That is, for example, if you, again, finished eating, you said your bracha achrona, and then you suddenly see that on the fork that you used to eat with, your own fork that you used to eat with, you see on the fork that there's some leftover food on that fork that you hadn't eaten, and it seems tasty to you. You don't want to throw it away now. You don't want to wash the fork in the sink and waste that food. You like that food. So if you want to eat just that little bit that's left over on the fork, after you finish the meal instead of bracha, you need to say a bracha rishona on that. Because again, that's not tasting. Even though it's a teeny amount, it's just leftover food stuck to the fork, but you're now prepared to eat it. You like the food. You're enjoying that little bit as you swallow it down your throat. So the enjoyment is what counts here and not the tasting. Therefore, you do say a bracha over that teeny amount on the fork. Okay. So what is the final halacha in this dispute between the Rif Rambam versus Rach Rosh? Right? Those are the two main camps. There are many Rishonim on both sides, but the two main camps are Rif Rambam, who say it all depends on your intent, doesn't matter if you swallow or not. Rach Rosh, Rabbeinu Hanan in the Rosh, who hold that it depends if you're swallowing it or not. If you're not swallowing, you do not say a bracha. If you're swallowing, you say a bracha. So what's the final halacha? The final halacha is like the Rif Rambam. Because we said the Shulchan Aruch takes the majority between the three opinions of the Rif, Rambam, Rosh. So the Rif and the Rambam are majority over the Rosh. So therefore, the final psak halacha is it all depends on your intent. Does not depend if you swallow it or not. If you intend on just tasting, then you do not say a bracha. You intend on eating, enjoying it, then you say a bracha. And same, by the way, the Ramah. The Ramah on the spot also agrees with the Shulchan Aruch that it all depends on your intent. So both Ashkenazim and Sfardim, that's the final verdict, the final psak for this case is to say the bracha when you're enjoying it and not to say the bracha when you're just tasting. Although the Shulchan Aruch does quote the Rosh as a yesh omrim opinion. There are those who hold that the moment you swallow it, even if your intent was just to taste it, you need to say a bracha, rishona. But that's just a yesh omrim, so we always follow the stam, the first opinion that he quoted without the yesh omrim, without saying that that there are those who say. So we say, so his main final psak is that it depends on intent. But since he did mention the opinion of the Rach and the Rosh as a yesh omrim, that if you swallow, you need to say a bracha, even though you're only tasting the food. So therefore, it's better yet either to taste and not swallow, taste and spew it out into the sink and wash the sink. Or if you're planning on swallowing what you're tasting, it's better to have first a food that has the same bracha rishona to actually eat the food. And then you've said the bracha already, and then go taste what you want to taste just for tasting purposes. But that's being extra stringent. If you don't want to do all this, you can easily count and rely on the opinion that's the main opinion, both Ashkenazim and Sfardim, who say that it all depends on intent. If you're just tasting, do not say a bracha, even if you're going to swallow. And if you're eating because you're enjoying it, say a bracha before you eat it. Question from Rivki, what about if you taste a soup and I see if you like it? If you're in a restaurant and you ask for a taste of the soup. Yeah, that's what we mentioned before, that if you're just testing the food, to taste the soup to see if you like to order it, so there you're not eating it in order to enjoy it. You may enjoy it in the end. The whole idea of tasting is to decide if you enjoy it or not. You may in the end enjoy it, but your intention is not to eat it because you like it, rather to test it. If you're testing if you like it. The fact that you're testing something does not require a bracha. Any type of testing, whether it's to add more ingredients or if it's to decide if you would like to order this food. The testing is not purely for enjoyment. If it's purely for enjoyment, you say a bracha. If it's for testing the taste of it, you do not say a bracha. It's interesting that the word taste is similar to the word test in some way. So if you're tasting in order to test it, you do not say a bracha. But if you're eating it in order to enjoy it because you know what it tastes like already, then only then you say a bracha. But again, since there is this opinion, the other opinion of the Rach and the Rosh, that when you swallow it down, even if you're just testing it and tasting it, you still need to say a bracha. So better yet, if you take, like, say, a cup of water and say shehakol and drink it, and then taste the soup, if it's a shehakol soup, so you're covered by the shehakol of the water, and then you can easily taste the soup and swallow it down, even according to the Rach and Rosh, who decide that you need to say a bracha just by the mere fact that you're swallowing it. It's better if you do say a bracha over something else that has the same bracha as the testing food, and then you're not entering this zone of a dispute. But if you don't have anything else of the same type bracha to eat or drink before you test the taste of that specific food you want to check, then you do not say a bracha in the end. That's the final psak. You do not say a bracha when you're just testing something. You're not eating it out of enjoyment. You're eating it in order to test and check the taste of it. You do not say a bracha. Even if you swallow it, that's the final psak. Quite surprising, but that's how both Shulchan Aruch and Ramah finalized their opinion for this. Okay, so we won't start the next chapter. The next chapter next week will be Dinei Kdima B'Brachot. Very, very interesting discussions of what comes first between all kinds of foods that are in front of us. What do we choose to say the blessing over first and to cover the rest of the foods that are on the table? Ha'etz, ha'adama, mizonos, shehakol, all the order between things. And within the foods, within ha'etz, within ha'adama, some foods come before the other, according to our liking, according to the importance of the food. We'll see many, many different discussions of what comes first. That's a whole new deal of discussion. Okay, so have a great week. Shavua Tov and Tu Bshvat Sameach. We should only see the growth and good times coming out of the dark times we're in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rav Steinberg.
Thank you. Thank you
Very
very
welcome.
much.
All
Have a
too.
good week.
Bye-bye. Shavua Tov.